Hello, I'm Rose from Transmutation Knits, and in this video, Brioche Basics for English or Right-Handed Knitters, I will be discussing the structure of brioche stitches and the fabric they make, as well as showing you how to do the brioche knit, brioche purl, and slip-one yarn over stitches. If you knit continental or left-handed, I have a tutorial that goes over the same information, but worked continental called Brioche Basics for Continental or Left-Handed Knitters on my channel, and I will provide a link in the description of this video on YouTube as well. To begin, I'm going to talk about the structure of the brioche rib sample I have on my needles. I find it easiest to work a pattern when I understand why I'm doing the action rather than just being told I should do it, so it's important to me to explain this to you as well. If you look at the fabric on my needles, you can see my stockinette lines in my color A yarn, this gray color, and where the purl bumps would be in this color B variegated yarn. However, it takes some tugging to see them because there are these V shapes of yarn in front of them. These make brioche the stretchy, squishy fabric that I adore so much. If we look at the wrong side, we see a similar situation, but this time my gray yarn has the V shapes and my variegated yarn has the reverse stockinette lines. It's important to note when you work brioche, you work each row twice, once for the color A yarn, and then you push your work back to the front of your needles and work across with your color B. You can tell which color you need to work because it will be the stitch with the wrap over top of it. Here you can see my gray yarn, or my color A, has the variegated yarn wrapped over it, so I know I need to work across with my gray yarn. Since we're on the right side of the fabric, I'll work across with brioche knit stitches for my gray yarn. This is particularly handy when you walk away from your knitting and have to come back and don't remember where you left off. So now I'm going to start my row with 2 garter stitches in the beginning with my gray yarn because I have a 2-stitch garter border to keep my edges neat, and then I'm going to proceed with my brioche pattern. So I'm going to bring my variegated yarn back to the front because my wrap fell into the back and I need to have that wrap maintained to continue the pattern with the rest of my row. But now you can see that I have both the stitch and the wrap for my first brioche knit stitch. So I'm going to slip my needle into the stitch knitwise, making sure to catch both the wrap and the stitch with my needle, and then I'm going to knit, and I'm going to make sure that I slip both the stitch and the wrap off of my left hand needle. From here, I'm going to do a slip one yarn over stitch because brioche is usually done in pairs, so I know that when I do one stitch, I'm going to do the next. So I bring my yarn to the front, slip one purlwise, and bring my working yarn back across my needle so that that variegated yarn has a gray wrap over top of it. Next, I'm going to do another brioche knit, so I'm going to slip my needle in knitwise to catch both the wrap and the stitch. I'm going to knit one and slip both the knit stitch and the wrap off of my needle. I have another slip one yarn over, so I bring my yarn to the front, slip one purlwise, and bring my yarn to the back again. I'm going to do another brioche knit, so I'm going to slip my needle through both the wrap and the stitch, knit, and slip both stitches off my needle. I'm going to continue with the slip one yarn over, bringing my yarn to the front, slip one purlwise, bring my yarn to the back, and then do the same pattern across my needle. Now that I've completed my row, I'm going to push my work back to the front of my needle because my variegated stitches now have the wrap, so I know I need to work my color B. So I'll push my work to the front, and I'll work brioche purls and slip one yarn overs with my color B yarn. I'm going to slip the first 2 stitches on my row because that's my garter tab or my garter border, and that is only worked at the beginning of each set of 2. And then I'm going to do a slip 1 yarn over. So because my yarn is already in the front of my work, I don't need to bring it forward. I'm just going to slip 1 purlwise, and then I'm going to bring my yarn around my needle back to the front for that yarn over to wrap over the gray stitch. And then I'm going to do a brioche purl. So I'm going to slip my needle in purlwise, making sure to catch both the stitch and the wrap. I'm going to purl, then I'm going to slip both the stitch and the wrap off my needle. I'm going to do another slip 1 yarn over. My yarn is already in the front, so I'm going to slip 1 purlwise, wrap my yarn around my needle for my yarn over, and proceed to my brioche purl. So I'm going to slip my needle in purlwise, catching both the stitch and the wrap, making sure to not to twist either of those, purl 1, and slip both the stitch and the wrap off of my needle. And then I'm going to proceed with the same slip 1 yarn over brioche purl across my row. When I come to the end of my row, I can see how my gray yarn now has the wraps, and I need to work the color A again, so I'm going to turn my work this time. Because I'm on the wrong side, I need to brioche purl my gray yarn and brioche knit my variegated yarn. So I'm going to do both of those stitches the same way, just in the opposite yarns. So I'm going to knit my first 2 stitches in my gray yarn to maintain my garter stitch border. And then I'm going to bring my yarn forward so I can do my slip 1 yarn over. And then I'm going to slip that stitch purlwise, bring my yarn up and around my needle to the front, and then I'm going to make sure that I insert my needle through both the stitch and the wrap and purl that stitch. And I'll do another slip 1 yarn over, wrapping my yarn around the needle for the wrap, and then proceed to brioche purl and slip 1 yarn over across my row, just like I did with my variegated yarn in the row before. Once I complete my row, I'll push my yarn my work to the front of my needle again, slip the first 2 stitches in my garter stitch border, and start with my variegated yarn to do a brioche knit, slip 1 yarn over pattern with my variegated yarn. So I'll brioche knit, making sure that I catch both the wrap and the stitch. When I do that, bring the yarn forward, slip 1 purlwise and wrap, and then again proceed with that same pattern across. Now that we have gone over how to do the brioche knit and the brioche purl, as well as the slip 1 yarn over, you are equipped to proceed with any pattern that asks for those 3 stitches or has a brioche rib pattern in it. I hope that these directions in this tutorial has helped make this a little bit more clear for you and helped you understand why we do the wrap stitches and the slip 1 yarn overs with brioche. I appreciate you watching, and I hope that these are able to help you transmute your yarn into something that brings you joy. If you have any questions regarding the tutorials, you can reach me at transmutationknits@gmail.com. You can find my patterns as well as my brioche patterns on Ravelry at Transmutation Knit, and you can find me on Instagram at Transmutation Knits. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.